Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the All Access Podcast. I have not been on a show in a while, so Lane, it's good to be back on with you. I'm excited to talk about our topic today. We are talking about a redeemed perspective of giving. And so, Lane, you and I talk quite a bit about money, about giving, about having impact in the world, about a theology of work, and how essentially the Christian worldview really impacts everything that we do, everything that we are, and our families and our work and all kinds of different things. And so I would love to just have like an informal conversation about how you view giving and money from this kind of redemptive lens or a redeemed Christian worldview, in the way that you're approaching, the way that you think about money, the way that you have conversations with people and help them think about money. Because, of course, as an impact advisor, helping people think through their giving and their philanthropic efforts, it's really key to have a coherent vision for what money is supposed to do anyway. And so we work, which produces money, and then we're supposed to do things with our money. So we have to have a theology of work, a theology of money, and then a theology of giving, if you will. And so in that vein, I would love to hear, how do you approach giving from your perspective when you're having a conversation, let's say with your average churchgoer? So this is a Christian who, let's say they've been Christian maybe for 5 years, maybe their whole lives, but they've never really developed what you might call like a really robust or rich theological worldview or biblical worldview. And so I'm thinking here, what's calling to mind is like Abraham Kuyper saying, there's not one square inch of all of life that Christ, who is King, Lord over all, says mine. That that his lordship is over every square inch of life. And not everybody has that kind of perspective. So when you are entering those kind of conversations, where do you begin? How do you even set up that kind of vision for somebody to have about their money?
It's funny, Brandon. We talk to donors all the time. People who are believers, and typically they want to give well. Nobody really wants to not give well. But to be honest, man, I'm convinced that many of us have, thanks to the Western church, to be honest, we have a very broken perspective on giving and money, as we've talked quite a bit about, but particularly giving, because that's where that's what we talk about with people all the time. I mean, we're giving advisors. We help people give well, particularly making an impact in the world. And as believers, we want all people to have access to the gospel and freedom from extreme poverty. And about half the world doesn't. And so we want to make an impact towards that. But when we talk to people and invite them to the fund at All Access and talk about their own giving and financial strategies, we have just learned that, and I'm included in this, Brandon, when I was a young engineer building yachts in Florida, dream job, wanted to give well. Like, I had a very Christian nationalism view of giving, to not feel guilty about my earning and my lifestyle. I'll give 10% to my church because that's the tithe, right? Which I'm sure we'll get into in a second, but there is no tithe in the New Testament. I go to church on Sunday. That's what you do, so you don't feel guilty. Be part of a small group. To be honest, what I experienced was a very guilt-based faith, including our giving, and that is just such a sad life. And I was just convinced, man, there's got to be more than this. And so, I quit my job, sold everything, moved internationally to serve, and I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life that I think I can save a lot of other people from doing and making those mistakes themselves.
Don't do what Lane did.
No, don't. But what I can do is help you from everything I've learned. And I went to a really good theology master's program to learn all of this and to try to redeem my broken perspective on giving. And that's what we do, is share that with others, help them, starting from their financial strategy. How does giving play a part in that? And once they have giving as a part of their financial strategy, how much are we going to give? How do we give? What is your own giving strategy? Who do we give to? How much to where? how are we holding them accountable? What's our plan? What are we trying to accomplish with that? And as believers, we pray, and I encourage people to have the Great Commission, Great Commandment as a part of your giving strategy, a significant part of it. And so we do all this advising, but it all starts with that perspective. And from a fear-based, like guilt-based, obligation-based perspective on giving to what I call a redeemed perspective, which is, as believers, we're here to follow Jesus and redeeming the world to himself and to each other. And giving is a really cool asset that we have to help us in doing that. So it's kind of like if you're a runner and you're running a race, like you are there, you're at the marathon to run, and you need running shoes to help you do that. Giving, I feel like, is a great, I mean, kind of like running shoes, almost seem the most important asset you have in doing that when it comes to helping people around the world. Great Commission, Great Commandment. And so it all starts with that perspective of my life is I'm here to make disciples of all nations, love our neighbors around the world, and be with Jesus, kind of like a John Mark Comer of being with Jesus and becoming like him. And a part of that is our giving. It's a really amazing, incredible time in the world that we can be a part of what God's doing around the world financially pretty easily. I say that. There's a lot of, to do it well, it takes a lot of research, but I mean, at the click of a button, you can give online, all access to give towards what God's doing in some of the darkest places of the world. I mean, we're talking about jihadist places in Pakistan, South Sudan, war-torn places like South Sudan, some of those. So that's what we're about. That's the perspective we try to bring in. There's lots of specifics and advice we share with that, but it all starts with that redeemed perspective. You were here to be a part of Jesus redeeming the world, starting with ourselves. If we haven't reconciled or repented to redeem our own lives in light of what Christ has done for us, to do that ourselves, and then join Jesus in doing that with others, inviting them into it. And giving is just a part of that. And so what that leads us to is some of the stuff we've been taught growing up. Give 10% to your local church. What about the needs in our own community? This or that, giving to our friends. It makes a lot of that more, it redeems those perspectives. And you go, why are we doing some of this? And hopefully it pulls you out of that thinking. So there's a lot to be shared there for sure.
Yeah. It's a complicated, it's very complex. I mean, what you just described is like our vocational life, things that we were taught when we were young that are quasi-biblical, like the idea of giving 10% is of course biblical. You see that several times in the Old Testament. But to your point, you don't see that in the New Testament. So did something change? Well, then that gets into the Old Testament, New Testament theology and, the role of the law and the role of Israel and many different things. And we do have, by the way, on the podcast, if you go to a previous show on tithing, just search for tithing and all access, and you'll see that episode come up. And it's a very helpful perspective on the history and the nature and the context of the tithe and what that means for Christians today. But I think what you were getting at is that vision or that imagination. Like, what is that spark, or what is that like more all-encompassing vision that somebody might have? And I'll maybe share a little bit of where I came from and how my perspective on money has been changing over the last couple of years very quickly. I think I mentioned this on another show, but I'm part of this research group out of Cambridge called the Kirby Lang Center for Public Theology. And we've been talking about how to steward capital from a theological perspective, from this kind of redeemed perspective of capital and money in general. There's theologians in the group, there's financial professionals, Wall Street vets, folks that are asset managers or private wealth advisors. And they have a very robust worldview after years and years and years of trainings. Many of them have been to seminary and then ended up getting MBAs or became, financial pros or getting PhDs. One of them is getting a PhD at Oxford on this topic. And they raise these kind of questions, like if you are advising a couple that, let's say they're a very ultra high net worth couple, should they sign a prenup? You know, or if you are investing, should you invest passively in an index fund? Or does that remove your accountability that God has for you and your dollars, you know? So should Christians use index funds or ETFs or mutual funds? And then maybe there's ESG and there's, you know, the sin stocks. We should avoid those. Then in that case, should we invest only in a concentrated portfolio? Should it be in equities? Maybe should it be commodities, real estate? Should it be private markets? Like there's all kinds of ways to think about, and then it comes down to, how do I view retirement? Why am I investing in a index fund, let's say in the Vanguard? Should I do that because I know I'm supposed to get a 9% return over 40 years that compounds, and then I can retire comfortably because I have $4.5 million and I have a 4% safe withdrawal rate, and then I can do blah, blah, blah. It's part of my 60-40 portfolio that may or may not work anymore because public equities are kind of what they are. Yeah. Bonds are what they are right now. So it like raises all these questions. Why is any of these returns or retirement pegged to a 9% S&P? You know, it's pegged to the S&P performance over the last 40 years. Well, the last 40 years is not the next 40 years, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. But also, why is 9%? Why does that matter? Should Christians think about it completely differently? And it turns out that so many of these assumptions we have about our financial models are just arbitrary, or they're not Christian at all. They're just the American dream, the American standard. And so then it raises all these questions. But if you don't have a strong biblical worldview, you don't know how to navigate these questions, which then raises the question, how should you develop a worldview so that you can think about money and giving and spending and saving rightly? And going through this process with this group over the last 2.5 years, I've realized I don't really have a strong theology of money or capital. Like, what's the nature of a business? What's the nature of our modern economy? You know, I mean, there's just so many different questions that it all stems from, you need a robust biblical worldview. And that takes about 15 years of like active study to start to get just the bare grasp of what that is. And so that's my take. I don't know how you would feel about that, but these are the questions I've been wrestling with too. And I've loved our podcast because it helps give a frame for giving and how to do that well. But part of it is just like, man, what is the city of God? What does it look like? How do we get there? How do I spend my life and my money building the kingdom that is one day going to come down to earth and be built here? Or is this the kingdom now? Are we living in it? I don't know. So many different. Anyway, what are your thoughts on like everything?
Episode 1 of 100 on this series. So
I know. I feel like it's
because it is. It's a lot. I mean, I have spent the last 6 years obsessing over particularly the impact space of loving our neighbors around the world, making disciples of all nations. How do we do that well? And money plays a very, very important part of that for most Christians here. It is like the way we play a part in that. So my take, Brandon, is, believers could spend the next 15 years individually all trying to figure this out. My philosophy is just come join us. And we're trying to make All Access a tool in a community of kind of like Jesus and the disciples, where he said, come follow me. He didn't say, hey, you should have this perspective. This take 15 years to study this and figure it out for yourself, but come with us as we're a group of believers who want to make an impact in the world with our lives, carrying out this perspective better and better in our own lives, learning as we go. But we have learned a lot in the last 6 years on this journey since I, left engineering, became a missionary in Haiti, wrestling with this in person there, and then back in the States after we had to evacuate, going back into professional business and in grad school, figuring this out. So there are starting to be tools out there that help people with their investing like that, because that's I think what's great about the open market is like, if more of us have long for this, hey, we don't want to invest in index funds and all of this. We want to invest in what's not taking advantage of people. It promotes godly values. Well, it'd be great if there were more tools that pop up, and they're starting to pop up. Still think we have a long way to go, but that's what All Access is trying to be, that tool and that community to help people do that, where you come with us, but more redeemed your perspective is on your own giving, the more enjoyable it is, the more you're going to participate. Because what happened, I sit down with somebody and I go, tell me about what you're passionate about, what you like giving to. And pretty often, Brandon, and I may catch flack from the local church on this, is, well, yeah, we just give 10% to the local church. And because we just tithe 10% to the local church. And
which, by the way, is above average. Like that, even in itself, is an amazing feat.
Yeah.
For
I mean, it's
a
like
lot
the
of
average
Christians.
is like
it's like 5 times the average.
Yeah, the average is 2%. And so, and the last thing I want to do is make anybody feel bad about that. But what I usually ask next is why. And that's where you start seeing more of the guilt, the fear of like, well, this is what the Bible says I'm supposed to do, so I just do it. And man, it's just a lot better than that. It's a lot better than that. So yeah, I do recommend people go listen back to the episode we did on the tithe. I mean, the summary is there is no tithe in the New Testament. Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament. He never recommended a tithe in the New Testament. Paul, none of the other New Testament writers ever did, even though they had ample opportunity to. But what you do see is this redeemed perspective where their whole life, not just the tithe, is now following Jesus, and giving is a part of it. You see it throughout the book of Acts and particularly in 1 Corinthians as well.
Yeah. And doing so joyfully and cheerfully.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the other thing, too. It's like, it should be a joy to give your money away. Is it for you? I think that's like maybe yellow flag 1 is like, is it a joy to be generous with the way that God has blessed you? If not, that's where that redeemed perspective can come in.
Yep.
Is your vision really redeemed?
And there's discipline in this as well. Kind of like where I do enjoy reading the Bible, but I do need to help. I need help, like setting aside time to where I do that, because with young kids, it's hard, things like that. So the same thing with giving. Like, yes, it is a joy, and we try to make it really enjoyable at All Access. Part of the problem is, I would say the nonprofit sector has not done a great job of making it enjoyable. We're trying to do a better job at that and make it really enjoyable. But there's some disciplines that help with that. So a financial strategy that includes giving. So if you're a W-2, what we do is just take the first percentile that we want to give out, and then we, invest and save and spend after that. That way we have the fun money up front of, hey, this is dedicated towards what we're here to do, what we want to do with our lives, the mission God's put us on. This is a special asset that is there. We don't need any return for ourselves in this, but there to be supportive of that. And, if you like running, getting new running shoes should be fun. Like putting on your running shoes should be fun. Getting out there and using them should be fun. And that's what we're trying to do is get people in the game, get people on this mission, come with us. But the more they can start having this redeemed perspective of giving, the more enjoyable it's going to be, and the more impact they're going to make with their own lives. And I pray that the Western church will embrace this as well, because I fear there could be pushback there for a fear out of a lack of, as they're pushed for budgets. Hey, I'd love your thoughts on this too, Brandon. My radical thought when it comes to churches, when it comes to giving, is don't give towards missions. Like the church is not responsible towards giving outside of the walls of the church. I don't know if that's right view yet, but let that be the people. Let the people, which is a church, make those decisions. The church can help facilitate that, but there's never, so like people will say, well, I give my local church, and then they give to whoever. Well, there's little to no accountability ever in that. Like the elders, if you have an elder board, is making those decisions, not you as an individual, and you have no real connection with it. But my philosophy is, hey, if churches feel cramped, like starved on their own budget anyway, just let us believers give to missions outside of the church, and we're giving the church to put the lights on. We're giving the missions organizations to advance the gospel, and just make it really clear, as opposed to give everything in the church and a slice goes to missions, and we have no idea what it is, who it was to, how the decision was made. Radical idea. I don't know. I'm talking to some church planners about that. and seeing if they'll bite on it.
Yeah, no, it's a great thought. I mean, I know people in churches where I am where they're considering leaving their church because the church doesn't give enough toward missions, and they want to be a sent out one from the church. And if the church is not resourcing them, they're actually leaving and going to another church. Is that right? I don't know. I think this comes back down to your biblical worldview. What is your ecclesiology? What do you believe about the church's role in society? Is it to be, there's like two kind of frameworks, and there's a million, but the two big ones are, is church meant to draw believers to itself, like representing the kingdom of Israel or Jerusalem, which was supposed to draw people to itself, be a shining city upon a hill? Or is it supposed to be sent out? It is equipping for the believers to send people outward. And so one is inward, one is outward. And from there, I think you might be able to derive some ideas about what the role of missions is. And
I don't think it has to be either or, really.
Sure, yeah.
Like I would imagine the Church of Acts, like Acts 2 and Acts 4, where like there's a beautiful passage in Acts 2 about, I think it's 2:42, about what the church was doing, coming together, and fellowshipping together, breaking bread together, people were getting baptized. That's super attractive. Like I would want to be a part of that. At the same time, they're also sending people out because they didn't have computers back then and couldn't evaluate nonprofits in Ephesus, from Jerusalem and find who can best make disciples in Ephesus. So they had to send Paul. And you see that, like between Acts 13, they like send Paul and Barnabas and these guys out. And then what's fun is, I think it's like Acts 15, 16, 17, one of those times, Paul comes back through and reports back of what he did. And so I think it's both and, but all, when it comes to how do we make more disciples and help more of our brothers and sisters in Christ around the world out of extreme poverty, how about this? We don't put that burden on our elders and our teaching pastor and the intern at the church. They're trying to shepherd their local church well, keep the lights on, and we're putting this a little bit of an unnecessary burden. And honestly, we're kind of outsourcing it, if you think about it, to them to say, we just hope that this helps somebody somewhere. And I mean, All Access, we're a tool to help people do that well. People could outsource it to us, but we're hoping they get really involved and engaged and want to go see it themselves and meet the folks and come together and all of that. So I don't know. That's my wacky thought on giving.
Man, I feel like we need a full episode of just like hot takes from Lane. Because when you say things like that, it's like, I've never really thought about it, because that's what churches do. They have people that they support in missions, and that's what part of the budget goes to. And it's just like, it's of course. It's like, should they? I don't know. Actually, that's a great question.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is like none of us in the congregation have any say in that. We have no, at least for me in like an SBC church, and we have great elders, and I love our church, and we give to our local church and all that. But I do think it would be really fruitful to have like a separate, where the church has a separate fund, and we the people choose and give towards certain initiatives, and put that burden back on the people where it should be, and not on, again, the staff and all of this of trying to figure that out with no input or vote on any of that from the people. So
I don't know. That sounds too democratic. That's way too American for me. I don't like that.
Radical, I know, right?
No, I like that. I like that idea. I've never really thought about it. Okay, so what is the takeaway for you in the last 60 seconds? Like a redeemed perspective of giving is, or should be, or think about this. What would you say? Yeah.
So it would be our whole being. We are disciples who are joining Jesus and redeeming the world to himself and to others, and giving is a part of that. And so when you view it through that lens, you can be way more impactful. You'll start thinking less about, I just got to give 10% to feel less guilty about myself, and more on, man, I really want our friends in South Asia to have access to the gospel, where there are over 1 billion people who have no access to the gospel in that area. I want that to happen. Who can best do that? I want to give towards that. And so if that's our end goal, if we're joining Jesus and redeeming the world and giving is an asset to be used, when we have that perspective, we'll typically start being more impact driven and focused on that. And All Access is simply a tool to help people do that.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It is a life-changing vision once you grab hold of it.
Yeah,
Truly.
changed my life for sure.
Same. It's actively changing mine. That's for sure. Well, Lane, thank you. I always enjoy our conversations. I'm glad to be back on the show just this once, but we will have many more episodes talking about these kind of things. But one of them, I think, should be just hot takes from Lane. We'll go from there.
Well,
Thanks as always.
I've obsessed over this the last 6 years, so I've got an index of all of these I've been wrestling with. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Maybe it's, in math, they have those millennial problems. There's like 7 millennial problems that nobody can really solve. And that'd be fun to have like a millennial problems episode. It's things that like you've been actively doing this and meeting with experts all around the world who have been thinking deeply about these things. And there's still these, like, they're just complex, nuanced conversations, practically and theologically. It'd be fun to kind of talk through.
Yeah, that would be fun. But our initial call to action is like, come join us on this. Come be a part of it.
Agreed.
And I'm so grateful that Jesus did that instead of coming and telling us, hey, you got to spend 15 years in Jewish theology school. Instead, just said, hey, come follow me. And by the grace of God, I'm trying. So it's been good.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm one of the nerds that I like to sit and ponder these questions that have no real outcome. I just like thinking about them. Anyway, appreciate you for being on the ground and making it happen. Well, thank you again for the show. Thank you for your expertise. And we will see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Brandon.